Good afternoon. Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a sore throat today, and I don't really actually know why. So if I sound a bit hoarse to you, your guess is as good as mine. It's Friday, and there are just a few days left until many Americans will cast their vote. Supposed to be the last day of voting in the United States on Tuesday, but of course rules are being made up as we go along. And I guess that's to be expected. We told you months ago, right on this show, we were the first ones to tell you about the Transition Integrity Project and this huge operation that was underway to disrupt this election, to break the norms of American elections, while the left accused the US President, Donald Trump, of doing that. That, of course, as you know, smartest audience in the world as you are, is called projection, and we're seeing it every single day. We've got a lot of stories over at thenationalpulse.com that we're going to be talking about here on air today. We're going to be joined by Krisha Lenzo from the Metropolitan Republican Club and Kane, the founder of Citizen Free Press, one of the single most important news websites you need to go to make sure that you are abreast of everything that's taking place, every minute that ticks by. Kane and his Citizen Free Press minions over there are well ahead of stories. I mean, sometimes days ahead of stories, mostly because they read the National Pulse. Now, I want to turn to your favorite, and I realize the audience, I'm not your favorite. I'm the third favorite after yesterday's interview, by the way, with Nigel. People were saying it was the best show. I said it has nothing to do with me. You have a star like Nigel Farage on. I didn't have to do anything. Not quite the same here, but you're getting there. You're almost there. The training is going well. Natalie Winters is in the house. Natalie, I want to turn to a couple of these stories that we've got up on the nationalpulse.com right now. The first one that we want to talk about here are these emails. The emails that request formal meetings with Joe Biden. And we've been told all along, remember, that Joe Biden's got nothing to do with this. We can get to the laptop if we can get it. Joe Biden's got nothing to do with this. Joe Biden's not involved in this stuff. No. As you can see here, from our reporting on the National Pulse website, I'm gonna put these emails on the screen. Let's keep this up there for the audience at home. I want to increase size here so people can read these emails for themselves. Natalie, talk us through them.
Sure. So there's a couple emails that go back and forth between Hunter Biden and some of his business partners. And perhaps the most egregious line, which I'll read out loud, it's a couple sentences, but it says, quote, "We need to get these guys to an event or something where they get to just formally meet your dad." Again, this email is going to Hunter Biden, the individual, and this man has a show on CNBC. He's a big real estate mogul. He continues, "For follow-on, they can talk to Chief of Staff," which at the time would have essentially been Steve Ricchetti, who again is still very much linked to the current Biden campaign, serving as a co-chair of the transition team. So you see, again, confirming what we've known all along, how Hunter Biden's position as the son of then Vice President Joe Biden was certainly used as a point of leverage, a bargaining point, really a punch to close the deal, meeting the dad, following up with Chief of Staff, again, as I said, who still retains active links to the campaign.
So hang on, that is not Hunter Biden, doing deals by even claiming, "Hey, I'm Hunter Biden, and therefore you should wink, wink, nudge, nudge, give me a good deal." These are billion-dollar deals that they're trying to negotiate between him and his regular business partners, Devon Archer and himself, on these emails. And the suggestion is, from Sean Conlon, the suggestion is, take them to an event where they get to formally meet your dad. For follow-on, they can talk to the Chief of Staff. So they don't just intend to meet Joe Biden to be like, "Hey, let's get a picture with Joe Biden," which, is bad enough selling that kind of access to your dad. But they want follow-on as well. They want follow-on with the Chief of Staff. What is that?
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about the foreign business partners that Hunter Biden has gone into business with, right? Chinese Communist Party, a lot of individuals in Kazakhstan, Ukraine, really all around the globe. But I think this email sheds light on why a lot of individuals, both in the U.S. and abroad, chose to go into business with Hunter Biden. So the reason why Hunter Biden was getting all these highly lucrative kickbacks from these accounts in these foreign countries was because individuals who had a lot of experience in the investing world, probably more than Hunter Biden did, chose to go into business with him because of his proximity and access to the vice president. And this deal in particular, the bonds that they were discussing, which there were several that could have potentially been acquired by Hunter Biden and his business partners, well, subsequent emails prove that each bond individually was worth over, quote, $2.1 billion. That's billion with a B.
Wow. So this is not chump change.
No, and as I said, there's several bonds being discussed here.
That is extraordinary stuff, Natalie. We got about a minute before we have to go to break here. I want to start at least introduce the next thing. We can pick back up in just a moment. But this is another foreign spy chief that we've dug up through the emails. The image was on the New York Post a while back, but what do we know? Another spy chief.
Well, you talk about photo ops with Joe Biden. So this individual, Karim Masimov, was pictured next to both Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and another Kazakhstani businessman. But it turns out that the individual is essentially Kazakhstan's spy chief. He heads an offshoot of a KGB-linked spy agency in the country. Nonetheless, Hunter Biden referred to him as a, quote, close friend in an email. And again, that's kind of a similar position, a similar role that we saw him refer to Patrick Ho as, quote, the spy chief of China in an audio recording that we published exclusively at the National Pulse a few days ago.
Can we get that on screen? I don't know if this connection to my laptop is working, but if we can get that on screen, I'd love to put that up. There we go. Look at that. Okay, Hunter Biden. That's Robert Biden, by the way. You know, in the thing. And I think we got a freeze on there from the last email. Well, when we come back, I want to show you this thing, guys. It's incredibly important you realize this is. Remember, he told you the effing spy chief of China was his best mate. Now, a close friend, Kazakhstan, Borat. We'll be back in a second. I'm over here breaking things, apparently, in the studio downtown Washington, D.C. I had this whole setup in front of me. I don't know if we can get a wide shot. I get this whole thing where my laptop connects and I can show you what's on my screen. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. You see, the whole thing is like, the wires are there, and they went to such great length to get me this thing, and I think I just broke it. So apologies to the Real America's Voice team here. Something to work on this weekend. Welcome back to the show. Before the break, I told you about this email that we had just dropped on the nationalpulse.com. Hunter Biden to Rob Walker. Rob Walker's asking him, like, hey, who's your buddy over here? And Hunter Biden goes, yes, standing with Masimov, Prime Minister of Kazakhstan, close friend. Now, Natalie, it's not just the fact that this guy, I mean, this is, by the way, this is why Borat went after Rudy. Because, again, all they do is projection, right? Oh, it's the Kazakhstanis and no. The real Borat's right here, right? But so let's talk about, look, I'm being flippant, of course, but hey, look, if Sacha Baron Cohen gets to do it, I get to do it, okay? I also have a much better accent than Sacha Baron Cohen does. But listen, he's not just a former Prime Minister of Kazakhstan and or spy chief, but tell us a little bit about the background of these spy agencies in Kazakhstan.
Sure. So this is Kazakhstan's National Security Committee, which was formed as an offshoot of the Soviet Union's KGB in 1992. And I didn't include it in the article because it was a little in the weeds. But if you look into the high-level leadership, former people who've directed this, either in terms of rank-and-file employees or chairmen, they all have extensive links to the KGB. So.
To the KGB. To the KGB. Remember, we're told that Donald Trump is the one in bed with the Russians, is the one with a bank account in China, is the one whose family is making so much money off Donald Trump being president. They're not, by the way. And here you got Hunter Biden, billion-dollar loan deals, billion-dollar bond deals to meet the vice president. Hey, we'll secure that deal. We just got to meet with Daddy. Then you've got Borat spy chief over here. You had the other spy chief, the China spy chief, Patrick Ho. I want everybody in this audience to take this information, and whether it's this that you share, whether it's the articles from the site that you share, you know, I want to bring on our next guest here, Krisha Lenzo. Krisha's the board member at the Metropolitan Republican Club, one of these groups that I did a talk for the other night. They're a fantastic group, and they're taking action every day to get these stories out there. But Krisha, you also do a Harvard in Tech thing. You're the executive director of a group that looks into these sorts of tech issues. Now, the tech companies are putting their finger on the scales on these stories, and I want to ask you about that. You know, I always try and impart to the audience how important it is that when you're censored, or at least when they try to censor you, you fight back by posting links 10 times over and 20 times over and 30 times over. So where are we with this story now? Because the last time I checked, and Natalie Winters popped the story up. Krisha, you're going to have to fight for the mic here because I love the sound of my own voice.
Here we go. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. These stories are getting buried. And this is the problem that we've been seeing with Jack Dorsey. Essentially, Jack Dorsey even lied in front of the Senate committee hearing the other day. He said, with specifically, you know, if we're going to discuss the origination of all this with the New York Post story, he claimed that, you know, the New York Post actually did have access to their Twitter account, which in fact we all know they didn't. So that's one lie there. The next lie is that, oh, he has no idea, basically, that the people who are working for him have a political bent. And even Mark Zuckerberg did the same. He claims that he didn't know that people who were working in Facebook's policy group there had previously worked for the Biden administration. So when it comes to breaking news stories, like you and Natalie have done a tremendous job at the National Pulse, we at the Metropolitan Republican Club, which I interviewed you the other night on some of the stories you're breaking every day, we need to promote and we need to get this information out there. And as people who you know, are active in politics and the technology space, it is incumbent on us to spread the information that you're working so hard to get and obtain all of these emails, which, as you found today, it really does appear to be a quid pro quo scenario.
So let me ask you, Krisha, about the Streisand effect with all of this as well, because I think, you know, it's not just my hectoring that's doing it. The audience themselves recognizes how important it is that they do share this. Searches for Hunter Biden actually surpassed the same number of searches for WikiLeaks from 2016. In the last couple of hours. So it does look like the American people, I've got all of these people who pop into my Twitter feed underneath whenever I put a story out like this, lefties, liberals, and they say, aha, this story is getting no cut through. I don't think it's getting no cut through. What about you?
I think it is getting cut through. Even Kayleigh McEnany, I saw she was retweeting you today. And here's the facts. I mean, Donald Trump Jr., he reposted and he said, if journalists, though, paid a little bit attention to these stories as much as they did to the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, you know, going through his records, his Yale yearbook or his notes, we would be in much better shape. But the fact of the matter is, yes, you are getting more coverage now because, you know, the news media is behind the eight ball and they realize they have to, you know, now move ahead and cover you guys. But it's unfortunate that it's taken so many emails to come out to actually get them to pay attention. But I think we're starting to see, hopefully, some of this information come out, thanks to you.
Look, I mean, and thanks to a lot of the other people who are working on it. Look, I want to show you this. Since I can't throw to my screen, I'm just going to hold my screen up here for people. Look at that traffic spike on the National Pulse right there. When we dropped the audio, it was absolutely. I mean, we do good traffic anyway, but this spike was absolutely magnificent. I don't know if the audience can even see that on my screen, but you know, we've had nearly 7 million people to the site this month. Page views. It's an extraordinary number of people who are seeking out these stories. Krisha, that's why we put together a homepage for it all. I've never done such a thing before. We put BidenLeak.com. You know, the Democrat Senate committee bought BidenLeaks.com in advance of this story dropping. So somebody knew somewhere along the line that this was going to be really bad for them. They bought BidenLeaks.com. So we got BidenLeak.com, and all of the stories are aggregating there. Look, Krisha, when we come back from the break, we've got a break here. When we come back from the break, I want to understand, because you're in New York, which I went to very recently. I've always thought New York was appalling. Sorry, New Yorkers. But it was especially appalling this time. I'm a Londoner, so we have just a little bit of competitive nature between the greatest city in the world and the wannabe greatest city in the world, the latter being New York. But I want to understand what New York is like under de Blasio. The president says in his rallies, everybody's going to open everything up on November the 4th. It's all politicized. We'll get to Chris Sciolenzo from the Metropolitan Republican Club in just a moment. Natalie Winters in the studio. Kane from CitizenFreePress.com. Stick around. This is the National Pulse, and we'll be right back. Still breaking things in the break. I mean, it's called The Break, right? So we're just breaking things all around the studio here. Welcome back to the National Pulse. Delighted to have Chris Sciolenzo, Metropolitan Republican Club board member, joining us down the line. Chris, I want to understand. I never thought New York could get worse, but somehow it has. You've lived there all your life. Talk to us about how it is to be, not just to be in New York right now, but as a comparison to the glory days during Giuliani and post-Giuliani, when he had cleaned up the city. I mean, it became like semi-all-right to visit once in a while. I came back a couple of weeks ago. It was ghastly. It was appalling. It was dark everywhere. It was scary. You could hear screaming going on all over the place. What is going on?
I mean, all you have to do is look at your Citizen app. For those in New York, it's almost a requirement to have the Citizen app to know where all of the crime and incidents are happening. And I remember over the summer when the riots and the looting were happening, it was pretty much everywhere. There was not one marker on Citizen that was, pretty much open. Even where I live, I'm on the Upper East Side of New York. I grew up here my whole life under Giuliani, under Bloomberg. Recently, a few months ago, a young woman who was 25 years old was raped at 11 a.m. on a Saturday by a man. And it was in broad daylight. People were seeing this actually happening as it was taking place and filming her. So that's really, really scary to me, obviously, even though some people say, oh, New York, there's outdoor dining, there's this, there's that. New York has changed. Fundamentally, New York is no longer the safe place that it once was. Even over the summer, shootings and crime increased. I think the numbers were over 300%. I'm very nervous as a New Yorker living here, as I'm sure as you are in D.C., especially Natalie, too, both of you living there, that next week is going to be a disaster. And that's what many people are predicting. The cops in New York are ready, but they're getting marching orders from the worst mayor in New York's history, Mayor de Blasio, who basically changes on a dime what he stands for. And he's hated among everyone, the left, the right. I mean, that's one thing New Yorkers can agree upon. We all hate Mayor de Blasio. It doesn't matter your politics, because you see what's happening. New York is filthy, and it's unfortunate. There's more homeless than ever, and they haven't dealt with it properly. And it's truly, truly sad that my city is in this state right now.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. I mean, look, London's no picnic nowadays either. I became quite infamous in the United Kingdom for going on television one day on Sky News and saying that London had turned into an S-hole as well, and it really has under Mayor Sadiq Khan. I still fancy London a bit more than I do New York. My friends Matthew Tiermand and Buck Sexton and the like, they're always trying to invite me up to New York, and I just I can't do it. I can't roll that way. Krisha, I want to understand. What's that?
I don't blame you.
Yeah, I don't blame myself. Look, I want to understand more about the Metropolitan Republican Club. You were kind enough to have me on the other night. I didn't realize it was supposed to be an interview, by the way. I thought it was just a lecture, so I just talked over you the whole time, like I'm doing right now. Tell us a little bit more about the club and what you guys are hoping to achieve.
Of course. So here at the Metropolitan Republican Club, with our president, Ian Walsh-Riley, he's done a great job. About every week or so, we have webinars with people like you, like Steve Bannon. We've had Kenneth Starr on our show, as well as other investigative journalists. Matthew, as you mentioned, he's going to be on with us next week. So we're trying to give these people, already, while you all have platforms, even more exposure within our community, because this is the group that is going to be active and actually trying to make changes. These are the people who are going to be door knocking, who are going to be retweeting, who are so, fervent in their beliefs and why they feel, so dismissed by our New York City mayor and, Governor
Right.
Cuomo. We just feel awful about it.
Krisha, how do you take New York back at this point?
I think the only way is to get rid of de Blasio. And even that, some people are saying, is not enough. Actually, one person on our webinar, Patrick Brosnan, who is a former New York Police Department person who was protecting even Mayor Giuliani, he was saying, the only thing we can do is get rid of de Blasio. But even then, there's so much damage that's already been done. New York at the current moment is back to the crime levels we were in the 1980s when Dinkins was our mayor, when ultimately we got a Republican mayor after, the crime that happened then, because it was just so bad on our streets. And I think certain people are running right now. I know Ray McGuire from Citigroup might be a contender in this upcoming election. Anyone but de Blasio at this moment. Even if, they're a Democrat, I think at this point we have to get behind
But Grisha, I see the same thing in London, right? People say Sadiq Khan is an absolute disaster, he's a nightmare, he's caused a lot of the carnage in London, spelled Khanage, but nothing can be done about it because there are just such a high number of entrenched liberal and leftist voters in New York. Now, I know you guys have seen some Trump parades through Manhattan in recent days or weeks. Tell us more about that. Is that changing?
I think more New Yorkers are coming out in favor of Trump just because, like I said, we're seeing what's happening on our streets right before us. Even some of the BLM, posters and things like that are being, Trump posters are going to be put over them. And really, there's more pride in New York. Look, Trump is a native New Yorker. He considers New York his city, despite everything and despite the backlash from New Yorkers who, as you mentioned, it's the reason that de Blasio is in power because of these New Yorkers who voted for them. We hope that the New Yorkers going forward will not be as stupid as they were when they voted for de Blasio, given everything that we've seen. But I don't know. People are very fickle and very manipulated by the media and by big tech, as we've been seeing.
Grisha, how does the audience connect with you? You're a hit in the live chat. How do they follow you?
Sure, you can follow me on Twitter. It's just Krysha. It's a complicated Polish name, KRYSIALENZO. I'll be happy to engage with you there and keep the conversation going. Take back New York.
That's awesome, Krysha. Thank you so much for holding it down up there in New York, especially so that means I don't have to come up there. We're really appreciative for you joining us on the show today. You're welcome back anytime.
Thanks, Raheem.
I look at cities like New York and I look at places like London, and once upon a time they were the hubs, right? They were the hubs of culture. They're the hubs of activity. They're not always the most moral places in the world. Cities tend not to be. You pays your money, it takes a choice as far as I'm concerned with things like that. But it's so sad. And it's even the same here in DC. I mean, everything right now downtown, by the way, if I could take a camera out here for you, I would. It's all boarded up. It's all boarded up. They're preparing for absolute mayhem. They're preparing for absolute carnage. And we got a really long article. Kyle Olbert has been working on this thing for a while that we're working on editing and getting up on the National Pulse site, and it walks you through how these people are planning bringing carnage to the streets. Not just if Trump wins, by the way, but especially if Trump wins. They're going to do it anyway. Even if Biden wins, these far leftists intend to hold him hostage. There's only one man I think who's going to stand up to it. It's Donald J. Trump. We'll be back in a second. I got this new device. We're not paid sponsors here, so I'm not gonna tell you what I got. I'll tweet about it later maybe. But it's so good. It's like a paper tablet. I can write all over it. It's fantastic. Welcome back to the show. Want to bring Kane from Citizen Free Press into the show right now. Natalie Winter's still here in studio working on a new scoop. Can we get Scoops in action over here, by the way, so people can see what Scoop? Come on, Scoops. There it is. There's the action center right there. Kane, welcome to the show. We're always so grateful for your time. You're an incredibly busy man, and I think the most important question right now that I have to start off with, can the McRib sandwich bring America together and prevent civil war?
I'm glad you asked that. As I wrote that headline, I thought about you and a few other people a little bit. The McRib is back. It's back nationwide for the first time since 2012. So there's a point of agreement that millions of Americans can find.
What is a McRib?
I don't know. I haven't had one since 7th grade, so it's been 40 years.
I'm not familiar with one either. Look, the reason I bring it up, obviously, it's one of the more jovial headlines over at over at Citizen Free Press. Although, as you say, maybe there is some truth to it. I want to throw some of these images on screen for you, Kane, that our producers took this morning to show what I mean when I say downtown DC is boarded up. This is, as you can see, I mean, this is on almost all the buildings now, slap bang in the heart of Washington, DC. You've got a little opening there so people can go in the door, but that is no way to live. That is no way. These people can't run their businesses. They can't run their hotels. They can't run their restaurants. They are being shut down again by the violent mob that is to be expected between now and goodness knows how long this is going to last. I don't even know if we want to stay in town. I don't know if I want to do the show from downtown DC, coming down here every day, while these marauding mobs of Marxists are patrolling the streets over the coming days and weeks. It's not safe. It's not safe for ordinary people. You can see there. I mean, it's heartbreaking, Kane. What do you think? Can you see these images?
Absolutely, I can see them. It looks like Antifa industrial fencing, how to keep out the black bloc. It's insane. I posted videos. The same thing is in Los Angeles. All of Rodeo Drive is boarded up. Seattle, the same thing. They're boarding up downtown. America's cities are becoming Antifa Black Lives Matter wastelands. And the Democrat mayors don't seem to care. You know, it just leads back to the election itself. There's so much at stake here. You guys talked about it on the War Room, on the Bannon War Room this morning. You know, there's a plot. Millie Weaver posted the video. There's a plot. It's been out. We've known about this for a few weeks, but there's a plot to essentially take over Washington, D.C. starting the day after the election and drive Trump out of office, whether legitimate or not. And these images are amazing. You know, the problem is all of America seeing them, or is only half? You know, is this being hidden from CNN viewers, from MSNBC viewers? Do they realize what's happening in our cities? And I think the answer is probably no. And I think it's the same no answer for the Hunter Biden and Joe Biden laptop from hell and all those revelations. You know, most of the people are not hearing it. I think it's having an impact on the margins, but we'll see. And good luck in D.C. That doesn't look good.
So you mentioned the hard drive from hell there, Kane. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of reporting over at the National Pulse. You know me, I have been just poring over this thing the last couple of days that we've had it. Natalie Winters, too, pumping stories out. Jack Maxey, Vishbura, Noah Benjamin, the whole team over at the War Room who've been working on this thing. Let me ask you this question, because the search seems to have overtaken, Hunter Biden overtaken Google search for WikiLeaks from 2016. Now, as you say, CNN's not really doing this. I think, Natalie, what did CNN spend 0 minutes on this, or 1.5 minutes on this was the story yesterday?
Since the original New York Post story dropped on October 14th up until October 27th, the mainstream nets had dedicated, I believe it was a grand total of 0.32% of total airtime to the story. And then you compare that with CNN and MSNBC immediately following the Bobulinski story, the interview with Tucker. They dedicated no airtime, where in contrast they dedicated zero. 94 minutes to Miles Taylor, the anonymous official, who again previously lied to CNN, insisting that he was not that official.
Kane, if a Bobulinski falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound?
Yeah, that's a great question. Apparently, the Google search results prove that it does make a sound. So people are finding out about this, you know, despite the network blackout. You know, I'm thinking about one person in particular. I've been following his Twitter feed the past few days, and that is the son of our great president. Imagine how he's feeling now. He was dragged through the mud on every network in America for holding an inconsequential meeting at Trump Tower that was most likely arranged by Fusion GPS and Glenn Simpson. The Natalie Veshcheskaya, I don't remember her last name. I sound like Joe Biden trying to pronounce something there. So imagine how Don Jr. is feeling right now when Hunter Biden has nothing. Maria Bartiromo put Senator Ron Johnson through the griller the other day, asking him, where's the subpoena? Where is the subpoena for Hunter Biden? There's no special counsel to investigate. So any FBI, DOJ investigations, which we got confirmation of last night, by the way, but any of that is all going to be silent. There aren't going to be leaks. We aren't going to know anything that's going on. But what about the Senate subpoenas? I mean, put the guy through the ringer, the same ringer that Don Jr. had to go through. And certainly there are, orders of magnitude more evidence that Hunter has been involved in some illegal and, if not illegal, definitely nefarious activities. So let's find out. Let's put him, regardless of how this election turns out, let's have the Hunter Biden show from late November through early December in the Senate. Let's have hearings. And
do Senate Republicans even have the cojones to do something like that? I mean, the Democrats are insane when it comes to this stuff.
Right.
They'll impeach somebody if they sneeze in the wrong direction, but without a mask on, right? But do the Senate Republicans have the same mojo?
You know the answer to your question, and it's no. It's because there's nobody in there with any cojones, as you said. Everybody with some backbone is in the House. All the Republicans who would be willing to do this are in the House. In the Senate, you're talking about Lindsey Graham, Ron Johnson, Grassley, Perdue.
Kane, we've got to go to a quick break. Hold that thought. We'll be back in just a second. More National Pulse. Kane from Citizen Free Press, Natalie Winters, Raheem Kassam. Hang on. Welcome back. I want to say a great big thank you. I was just looking at my emails. A great big thank you to everybody who's joining the National Pulse over the last couple of weeks, especially. So many new members over at the National Pulse. I want to take a second to honor the people who have stepped up to do your duty as a citizen, and that is to fund real news. That's why we have the domain fundrealnews.com. You get a whole bunch of benefits for joining us as members at the National Pulse. So I want to roll these names of the latest members to the site, and I want to thank the people: Janie D. and Howell L. W. Connie W. Y. John G. Thomas M. Patrick W. Elizabeth C. John D. Sean G. Sabrina J. Venus W. and obviously more and more, as you can see on your screen. We'll keep it up there scrolling, so that everybody gets their mention here on the show, as we promise we always do every Friday. If you want to be part of it, fundrealnews.com. I want to bring Kane from Citizen Free Press back on with us now as well. Kane, so many people are getting the idea to leave the big cities now, to leave Washington, D.C., to leave New York, to leave some of these places that are going to be terribly hit, or at least we think they're going to be terribly hit. You mentioned the Millie Weaver thing. They're having Zoom calls, strategy calls, the hard left every single day right now. And they're kind of in our faces about it, Kane. Because guess what? They murder people in the streets and very little happens. They burn down West Philadelphia and very little happens. So why shouldn't they be in our face? Why, if you're them, you do that, right?
Yeah, you put feelers out there, you see what you can get away with and see what the DOJ and federal response is. And if there isn't any, and if there's no state response from your emasculated Democrat governor and nothing from the similar Democrat mayor of Philadelphia, then you keep pushing. There's no consequences. That's something that's frustrated the right from the beginning, since these riots began 150 days ago or whatever it's been. Is the lack of response, and it's a debate that's gone on. Is it a better idea for President Trump to allow these cities to burn and destroy themselves, and that makes an impression on voters that then will be more inclined to vote for the president, or is it better to go in with a heavy foot and quash this stuff? I'm not sure that we know the real answer. There's so much. The problem for the president there is there's so much pushback when he attempts to do anything in a blue state. But it's, I think to wrap it up quickly, I think that's going to be what propels Trump to victory in Minnesota, though. So I at least am optimistic that the mayhem in inner cities will help Trump on Tuesday. We'll see.
So let's talk about Tuesday here. You're obviously watching the headlines. Remind our audience how many browser tabs you have open at any given time, Kate.
Today it's really bad. I've been hitting the limit. And what that means for people who never venture into this form of insanity, hitting the limit means there is no more room in your window. So it's at around 78 or 79 open tabs. And I open 3 or 4 more and they're invisible. So then I have to find 3 or 4 amongst the 78 to close in order for the new ones to show up. So yeah, that's my life. And it's the same as you. We're just struggling for sleep in the last 7 days. 3-4 hours at night and a couple-hour nap in the afternoon, and just posting headlines nonstop from 10 until this morning. It was about 6:15 when I finally logged off. In fact, Paul Bedard happened to notice. He sent me a direct message on Twitter. Paul Bedard is the great Washington Examiner columnist, saying, "Are you just hanging up your sneakers for the night?" And he was, of course, waking up for the morning. So yeah, maximum tabs, maximum pressure, and maximum enthusiasm as we head into Tuesday. You know, we're getting close to 90 million people have already voted. There were only 138 million who voted in 2016. So we're at what? That's 65%, 66%. I imagine by Monday, we're going to be looking at over 100 million people have voted early. So it's
100 million real people, or 100 million, we don't know. We don't know where all these, what all the integrity of all of these ballots. That's going to be one of the major things.
No, you're absolutely correct. We don't know the integrity with the early voting and blank ballots. It'll be really interesting to see. I'm really looking forward to looking back in 30 days and finding out, seeing what we found out about the fraud that goes on. As for the 100 million, I'll quickly throw a thing in about motor voter and the fact that in so many of these states, if you're an illegal alien and you get a driver's license, you have to manually uncheck the box that says automatically register me to vote. Right. So, and I'm thinking of New Jersey in particular. So I think the default mechanism is that a non-citizen would be default registered to vote unless they personally uncheck it. So yeah, of the 100 million, I'll do this really quickly too. The left needs to read their own Washington Post. The most comprehensive academic study that's been done on voter fraud was published in the Washington Post by a couple of professors. I think it's probably 2015, maybe even 2014 now, but people should search for it. They came up with a number, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't read it in a couple of years, but close to 14% of non-citizens have admitted voting in presidential elections, at least at one point. So,
those are the ones who admit it.
Yeah.
And those are just the ones who admit it, Kane.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Who knows what's really happening?
It's an extraordinary thing, and especially when you look at how many people we actually have in this country illegally here. You look at the Joe Biden plan. No wonder he wants day one of his administration, he said, just total and mass amnesty, which of course will lead to another rush to the border and a lot more people who do that as well. And then you'll end up not with just a massive demographic and irreversible demographic shift in the country, an infrastructure problem, but you'll also end up with rigged elections for the foreseeable future. And that's where this is all going. That is the ultimate stake of this election, right? Is, do you have a country or not in 4 years' time or 8 years' time as a result of a Biden-Harris administration, or rather I should say Harris ? Administration? Because Joe Biden ain't lasting in there. Joe Biden's just a transition candidate. He said it himself. Kane, we're going to go to a quick break now. When we'll come back, I want to get your predictions for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whenever we will get the results of this election. We'll be doing live broadcasting here on Real America's Voice and the War Room as well. Lots going on, lots for you guys at home to choose from. I want you to make sure that you're downloading the Real America's Voice app on your Roku, on your Pluto devices, on everything. Apple TV is where I use it. It's so great. You got to go and look at it. Real America's Voice. Go download it in the break. We'll see you in just a second. Some breaking news in this hour from Savannah, Georgia. Emergency crews responding to the Savannah Mall early on Friday afternoon local time following reports of 3 people having seizures. Paramedics arrived on the scene at around 1:30 p.m. local time. And according to Chuck Kearns with Chatham Emergency Services, the cause of the seizures is not known at this time, but suggested possible inhalation of poisonous fumes. The Savannah Fire Department has been called in to monitor the air quality, and officials say occupants are sheltering in safe place until the investigation is complete. Just a very strange story that popped up on my radar in the break. I wanted to make sure that you guys were abreast and aware of that. And the reason I do it is because, Kane, we were talking in the break there, and you said something, right? You said about the wild cards that we might see taking place around this election. Now, there's always concern around big events, and an American election is just about the biggest political event that the world ever sees. But you think about the World Cup, you think about the Olympics, they're always concerned about these big sort of black swan events. What if you get a terror attack? What if you get a mass seizure attack? And what if you get something that that debilitates the ability for government to communicate with the people in case of emergency? I know it's a kind of a wild conversation that we never even mentioned or didn't plan to talk about today on the show, but this just kind of reminded me we're living in such weird times that anything is possible here.
That's true. And the last thing that you mentioned, something that could potentially destroy the communications abilities, that's probably one of the biggest fears, an EMP shock. Actually, not to mention Paul Bedard again, but he's the guy who's been writing about potential Chinese EMP shocks here in the U.S., and he's been sounding the alarm for 18 months. And it is the wild card. Well, what if there were some sort of brazen big terror attack, something chemical, something poisonous in D.C., in New York? All of these things, I'm sure the authorities are considering them. Let's hope that they are. But it's a wild card that you don't normally imagine. I wanted to quickly mention something. You talked at the end of the previous break about ultimately this election is about the border, having a country, having the ability to decide who can come in, who can't. And ultimately at its level, that's about protecting wages. I don't care what anyone says. Controlling your country and your border is about protecting the wages of the workers who work within your country. And it's very interesting what happened to Mark Morgan. Mark Morgan, for people who don't know, was Obama's Border Patrol chief, and he has the same job with with Trump now. And he was actually suspended by Twitter either yesterday or the day before because he dared to talk about the progress of the wall, the 450 miles that will be completed by the end of this year, and the success that CBT, the Border Patrol is having. And I just thought it's completely ridiculous. He said that is Twitter jumping the shark. The idea that the head of the Border Patrol is not even allowed to do a post essentially glorifying the fact that we're getting finally the beginning.
Well, Kane, he's not allowed to tweet that he's doing his job. Right?
Yeah.
That the policy of the administration that the American people elected is being carried out. It's a sign. They're doing it to send a message. They're saying, hey, if you work in government, you better agree with liberals and lefties and whistleblowers like Alex Vindman and the soy boy from the Lincoln Project, whatever his name is, that was the great anonymous, turned out to be just a total flunky. Nobody cares.
Yeah,
Miles Taylor, Junior of all the juniors, Grundoon of the Grundoons. Kane, it reminded me of Philadelphia. They found in Philadelphia the van of explosives, right? It's clear that something terrible is amiss here. We've got about 3 minutes left. I want to just remark upon that, get your thoughts on that, but also, your predictions for Tuesday night in general.
Yeah, the Philly van story, that was interesting. Who knows what those explosives were for, but there's your wild card right there. When you talk about Mark Morgan not even being allowed to do your job, take it one step further. What they're essentially saying is United States federal law cannot be discussed on Twitter, because that's all Morgan does, is discuss he's enforcing the laws that are on the books that Congress has passed, and apparently those laws don't meet the muster of one nose ring wearing Jack Dorsey. Let's talk Tuesday. My predictions, I've been saying it for a month. I think it's going to be just like 2016, really, really close. How long will it take until we know? I think, officially it's going to perhaps be the end of the week. But we're going to learn a lot from Florida. And as you know, and I heard on your show this morning, Florida is probably going to have results because they've been looking at the ballots ahead of time. So, look, when Trump wins Florida and when he wins North Carolina and when he wins Ohio by 6, all the lefties, all the progressives are going to start to panic. David Brooks, if you remember him on PBS at 9:30, talking about the New York Times needle having switched and that Trump was now 50-50. We're going to see the same thing on election night. I put up a bunch of stories the last 3 days from pollsters who are outside of the mainstream, and even the USC Dornlife guy that Drudge has been linking to constantly. He came out yesterday and said his alternative social circles polling shows that Trump may win. So it's going to be really close. It's going to be a couple of points on the popular vote, and it's going to come down to those swing states. Here's my final thing. As long as Trump can hold Georgia, and Gingrich said today, don't believe the polls, that Trump will win Georgia by 6 or 7. As long as he wins Georgia and wins Arizona, I think we got this. I don't even think we need Pennsylvania. And I put this story up yesterday. It may be Biden who has the narrow path. I've never been more excited about an election for this one. And one of the main reasons is hopefully just to rub we've had 18 months of BS polls, and I can't wait to stomp on them.
Yeah, I think that's right. Kane, hey, listen, we're at the end of our show. Want to make sure everybody goes over to citizenfreepress.com. Make it one of your favorites. Make it one of your must-checks multiple times a day, just like we do in the War Room, just like we do in the National Pulse office, just like we do here at Real America's Voice. Citizen Free Press, thank you very much for your time, Kane.
Great, and thanks again for the awesome opportunity. I hope you feel better and stay safe if you head to West Virginia.
Can't keep me down. Natalie, you're working on something. Just tell us real quick.
A mainstream media journalist and alum of Michael Moore's film production company. Well, he wants to destroy your ballot if you voted for Trump. He also thinks it's legal to do so, and he jokes that 75% of the mainstream media enjoys destroying pro-Trump ballots so much they just have to find the time to do so.
You can read that on thenationalpulse.com in just a few moments. Natalie Winter-Scoops over here working very hard. We'll see you again on Monday in the War Room at 3 p.m. here on the National Pulse. See you then.